Welcome to this explainer on Nassim Nicholas Taleb's masterpiece, The Black Swan. If you look around right now, our world probably feels more chaotic, more volatile, and honestly, just more unpredictable than ever before. We're constantly seeking certainty, right? We build these incredibly complex models to try and predict the stock market, politics, technology. But what if that craving for certainty is actually just a dangerous illusion? Today, we're going to completely shatter those illusions. We're diving into why the events that matter the most in history are the exact ones we literally never see coming. Okay, let's dive right in by asking kind of an uncomfortable question. Are you a turkey? No, seriously. Imagine a turkey on a farm. For 1,000 days straight, the farmer comes out and feeds the turkey. Every single day, the turkey's trust in this farmer grows. By day 50, it's relaxed. By day 500, it feels completely secure. And by day 1,000, the turkey is absolutely certain that the farmer is its benevolent caretaker. I mean, it has a literal mountain of historical data to prove it. But then, day 1,001 rolls around, the day before Thanksgiving. The butcher arrives, and that absolute certainty is violently erased. The turkey is a creature that extrapolates 1,000 days of past safety to predict a future that suddenly ends in absolute disaster. This darkly humorous little parable actually illustrates what philosopher David Hume famously called the problem of induction. The core issue here is that no amount of past observation can logically prove what's going to happen tomorrow. Our turkey had a massive data set, 1,000 days of perfectly consistent evidence, but that data was mathematically useless for predicting day 1,001. And the scary part? We make this exact same catastrophic error all the time, in finance, in business, in life. We mistakenly believe that just because something hasn't happened yet, it won't happen. We completely forget that the absence of evidence is definitely not evidence of absence. And that brings us to the historical metaphor that gives this whole concept its name. For centuries across Europe, it was this unshakable, universal truth that all swans were white. It wasn't just a guess, it was considered an absolute, undeniable fact of biology. Millions upon millions of white swans had been observed over millennia. The certainty was total. That is, until a single observation in 1697 by Dutch explorer Willem de Vlamingh in Western Australia destroyed that supposed universal truth in an instant. Just one single black swan, that was all it took to completely invalidate thousands of years of accumulated knowledge and, frankly, European arrogance. So Taleb takes this idea and defines history-altering events for our modern world using three very specific characteristics. First, they are extremely unpredictable outliers. They lie completely outside the realm of our regular expectations. Second, they carry a massive world-changing impact. Think about the sudden rise of the internet, the September 11th attacks, or the 2008 global financial crisis. But the third characteristic, this is the most fascinating one, retrospective predictability. These events are impossibly rare and massively consequential, yet our psychology just can't handle the randomness. So what do? Our brains rewrite history after the fact. We concoct these neat little explanations to make completely unpredictable events seem like they were entirely inevitable all along. Now, to understand why we're so completely blind to these massive events, we have to look at the two very different worlds we inhabit. Taleb divides reality into two conceptual domains. On one hand, you have the bounded, predictable world of Mediocristan. On the other, you have the wild, scalable, unbounded world of Extremistan. The huge problem here is that we are constantly confusing which of these two worlds we're actually operating in, and that confusion, that is exactly what sets us up for catastrophic failure. Let's look a little closer at Mediocristan first. In this domain, extreme outliers are naturally limited by the laws of physics or biology. Think about average human height. If you take a stadium full of thousands of people, and then the absolute tallest human ever recorded walks into that room, sure, the dynamic changes a bit, but it won't break your statistical models. The tallest person on Earth isn't 1,000 times taller than the average person. In Mediocristan, individual extreme events simply don't meaningfully affect the total average. It's a safe, mathematically bounded environment. But then you have Extremistan. In Extremistan, things scale without any physical limits whatsoever. A single observation or a tiny microscopic fraction of the population can completely dominate the entire total. Just think about modern wealth distribution. You have a fraction of a percent holding more wealth than the remaining 99% combined. Or think about a best-selling book that sells tens of millions of copies, while the average book sells maybe a few hundred. Extremistan is driven by digital scaling, winner-take-all economics, and global connectivity. This wild, unbounded environment is exactly where the 2008 financial crisis and really all black swans live. So here is the absolutely crucial point. Modern society is desperately trying to map the extreme, unbounded chaos of global finance, politics, and tech using the safe, outdated bell curves of Mediocristan. When bank regulators or economic forecasters use standard risk models that assume extreme events are virtually impossible, they're fundamentally applying the logic of human height to the unbounded chaos of the stock market. It's literally like trying to measure the destructive force of a Category 5 hurricane using a 6-inch wooden desk ruler. That fundamental mismatch between our tools and our reality is incredibly dangerous.
So why do we keep making this mistake? Well, let's explore our cognitive blind spots, starting with the narrative fallacy. This is the psychological mechanism that forces our brains to impose a false sense of order onto pure, unadulterated chaos. We absolutely hate randomness. We just can't stand it. So we simplify reality. We conveniently leave out the messy details, and we invent coherent stories after the fact. Just watch the financial news on any given day. The stock market might drop purely due to random algorithmic trading, but within minutes, reporters will instantly invent a highly specific logical narrative to explain exactly why it happened. We crave a neat story so much more than we crave the actual truth.
We also suffer massively from survivorship bias. We completely ignore what Taleb calls silent evidence. This is the vast, unobserved graveyard of history. Now throw confirmation bias into the mix, and it becomes painfully clear why our brains are hardwired to completely ignore the unprecedented events that actually matter most. We naturally and aggressively look for evidence that proves what we already believe, and we physically filter out everything else. If you deeply believe a market will keep going up, your brain will literally filter out the warning signs. If you're only ever looking for white swans, your cognitive biases will physically prevent you from anticipating a black one. You end up protecting your worldview at the cost of your very survival. And this brings up a great point about why so-called experts, economists, and forecasters fail so spectacularly. It's because they commit the ludic fallacy. In a game like chess or roulette at a casino, the rules are perfectly fixed, the outcomes are clearly bounded, and the probabilities are beautifully mathematically calculable. But real life is not a game. In real life, the rules are unknown, the players are irrational, and the risks are completely unbounded. Treating the unbounded, messy risks of reality like a predictable casino game leaves you entirely exposed to catastrophic shocks. So how do we survive in this volatile world of Extremistan? We have to deeply embrace epistemic humility. I absolutely love Taleb's concept of the anti-library. Most people take immense pride in their standard library, the books they've already read, which represent what they already know. They view knowledge as a trophy. But Taleb argues we should highly value our anti-library of unread books. The unread books represent what we don't know. Maintaining an anti-library acts as a constant, physical, and humbling reminder of our vast ignorance. It prevents that dangerous, turkey-like arrogance of absolute certainty. Since we absolutely cannot predict the future or see the next black swan coming, our only real solution is to build a robust posture to withstand sudden shocks. How do we do that? Well, you eliminate debt and avoid leverage, because those things violently amplify damage when a black swan actually hits. You maintain redundancy and backups, so you never, ever rely on a single point of failure. You hoard cash because having cash gives you incredible optionality and power when everyone else is desperate and panicking. And above all, you maintain a healthy, rigorous skepticism of anyone claiming they can predict the future. This brings us to Taleb's famous barbell strategy. The core goal here is to completely avoid the fragile middle. The middle offers moderate returns, but hides massive, ruinous tail risks. It offers the illusion of safety. Instead, you put the vast majority of your resources, say 85 to 90%, into extreme safety, like treasury bonds or cash. This completely protects you from negative shocks. Then, you put that remaining tiny sliver, maybe 10 to 15%, into extreme, hyper-aggressive risk, like startup investments or options. You cap your downside completely, but leave yourself entirely exposed to massive positive upside. Essentially, you make yourself unkillable. As we start wrapping up this explainer, Taleb reminds us of a fundamental flaw. The failure to understand probability is structural to the human mind. We naturally learn from specific facts and specific experiences, rather than abstract rules. We constantly treat the symptoms instead of the disease. I mean, we spend all our time aggressively preparing for the last black swan event, rather than preparing for the unpredictable nature of black swans themselves. This means we have to actively, consciously, and daily train ourselves to accept uncertainty, rather than hiding behind false models. So as you step back into a highly improbable, deeply unpredictable world, you really have to ask yourself a critical question. Are you positioning your life, your finances, and your worldview to be the oblivious turkey, relying on past data and comfortable narratives until the butcher unexpectedly arrives? Or are you building the robustness, the epistemic humility, and the barbell strategy to become the survivor, ready to weather the storm and maybe even benefit from the chaos? The black swan is out there. It's really just a matter of time.